Welcome to the SpaceClaim basic training on the Move tool. For this exercise, open up the Move Basics part. And we'll be completing this exercise on this geometry. To start, activate the Move tool from the Edit group in the ribbon bar. And now, let's move this cutout at the front of our part to a new location. So I'm going to zoom into the front, and I want to box select all four faces of this square cutout. So I'll drag a box from left to right, holding down my left mouse button, and make sure that I'm fully encompassing all four faces. I can now go in with the Move tool and move this geometry in one of 6 directions: 3 translational vectors and 3 rotational vectors. So if I want to move this along the front of the remote, I can click on the red arrow and then click and drag anywhere in my design window to move that geometry in the direction of the red arrow. And once I'm finished dragging, I can let go of my left mouse button and type in 15 and hit enter to give it a precise value. I can also rotate this geometry by clicking on the blue rotational vector and then clicking and dragging to rotate that geometry along the rotational vector. And again, at any time I can let go of my left mouse button to stop rotating, type in a definite value, say 90, and hit enter to rotate that whole 90 degrees. Now with the Move tool, I can select on this front face and translate that front to back, or I can rotate that along the green arrow. And you notice that it pivots along the center of the face where my move anchor is located. Now if I want to cancel this rotate operation while I still have the left mouse button held down, I'll hit the escape key, and that cancels the operation. Now if I want to pivot about a different point, I'm going to use the Anchor tool guide in my tool guides on the right hand side. So I click that Anchor tool guide, and now I can choose another piece of geometry to pivot about. So I'm going to select the round at the front right corner, left clicking on that, and it pivots the anchor point about the center of that round. And now when I rotate in the direction of that blue rotational vector, you notice that it rotates along that pivot anchor. And I can type in 20 degrees for my rotational angle. Click in white space to clear. When I'm moving with the Move tool, I can box select that hole like I did before, and I can copy geometry by holding the Control key down. So if I hold the Control key down and click and drag on the red arrow, I can copy that geometry, and again I can hold Control down and drag along the green arrow to copy it again. And those are all independent copies of that geometry. If I want to move all 3 of those holes together, I can box select from left to right along all 3, and now I can move all 3 of those by dragging in one of these directions. You'll notice that the anchor point for my move is located at the approximate center of all 3 of these pieces of geometry. If I want to measure the distance from one of these faces off of another face, I can do that by re-anchoring and creating a ruler dimension. So I'll re-anchor as we saw before by clicking the Anchor tool guide. and then selecting the face that I'd like to anchor to. So I'm going to select the face of the rightmost cutout. Now it re-anchored my move anchor to there. And now I want to create a ruler dimension to make sure that this face is located a specific distance off of the front face of this button. So I'm going to click on the blue arrow with my left mouse button and choose the ruler tool guide from the mini tool guide that pops up. The ruler tool guide is also available from the move options on the left. And now I'm going to go ahead and select the front face of that button to measure off of. And I get the current dimension pops up, but I can type in 6 and hit enter, and it'll move all 3 of those cutouts, dimensioning the back face of this cutout from the button 6 millimeters. Go ahead and click in white space to clear all of my selections, and I'm going to click the Home button in the Orient group to return to Home View. Now another feature within the Move tool is the ability to create patterns. So I'm going to zoom in to the blue square at the top of the remote. I'll go ahead and again box select just around that blue square, making sure not to grab anything extra. And I'm going to toggle the Create Patterns option on the left-hand side. Now as I click and drag along the red arrow with my left mouse button, you notice that it automatically creates for me a pattern. So I can change the count to 4 and hit Tab. And now I can tab between these 3 values, the individual spacing, the number of instances, and the overall spacing, and change any of these at any time. So if I type 24 and hit Tab, it'll update my pattern with an overall length of 24. And I can go to the count and choose to lock down either the individual spacing or the overall spacing by clicking on the lock icon. So if I lock down the overall spacing at 24 and change the count to 5, then that creates 5 instances within the same overall length. I can also create rotational patterns the same way. I'm going to box select the small circular button, and instead of translating along the red vector, I'll hit escape to cancel that. I want to rotate about the yellow face. So I'm going to drag my anchor handle from the center ball up to the yellow face, and now I can rotate along the blue rotational vector. Again, I'll hit escape to cancel out of that. I want to make sure that I toggle Create Patterns from the options on the left. And now as I rotate along that blue vector, it creates a pattern of instances for me. And when I hover over any instance where I can get a regular pattern around 360 degrees, I can stop there and create a 360 degree pattern. If I change the number of instances to 8 and hit enter, now I have 8 instances of that protrusion around the top key. And I can say move one of these, move that vertical to change the height of all 3. Or if I box select the entire protrusion, or on any of these protrusions, I can change one and see all of them update. Thank you for watching the Move Basics training.